The Habs have been linked to two former first-round picks, and we'll be talking about the potential moves that they can make to acquire these players. We'll be getting into all that and much more in this edition of Habs Digest. Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's news edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Goss, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. Really quick before we start, I know I remind you guys every video, but if you haven't hit that subscribe button, do it now. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers. We can taste it, and we'd love your guys' help in reaching that milestone. Jesse, big news today. Former first-round picks might be on their way to Montreal, and when I say former first-round picks, I'm not talking about necessarily some scrubs that have hardly played in the NHL. I'm talking about two big names, and the first of which is Jesse Puljujarvi. Check this out. From Montreal Hockey Now, they reported in August that the Canadiens had shown interest in Puljujarvi as they were looking to take on more buy-low projects as they have in the past. According to one NHL executive with knowledge of the NHL trade talks involving Puljujarvi, the Montreal Canadiens did their due diligence on the 4th overall pick, that's Puljujarvi, during the draft at the Bell Center this summer in the 2022 NHL draft. Jesse Puljujarvi, of course, has not been great as of late. Oilers fans, I know, are a little frustrated with him, but there's a reason he was the 4th overall pick in 2016. The Habs have kicked tires on him as recently as the draft this summer, and with a player like him who's going to be an RFA next year and looking for a new home, do you think Montreal maybe has the assets to make this deal happen?
I think they do. Should they? That's the other question. But I mean, if management is thinking about this, then they definitely have their reason. And they do have a quite recent track record of when just taking a former first-round pick, a very high pick, in Jesse Puljujarvi, very much like Kirby Dach, within the top 10, even within the top 5. They have a great history of turning that player around. So, I mean, maybe a change of environment could serve Jesse Puljujarvi very well. Great name, by the way. But that being said, I would definitely have to agree that I would put a little bit more faith in the Kirby Dach turnaround, as we've seen so far this season, than this happening in Jesse Puljujarvi's case. Just very interesting, some comments he made recently, Josh, about being uncertain if he even has a place in the NHL, if he's even good enough. So this is a player that's really battling with some serious confidence issues at this time, but the potential remains all the same.
There's some interesting conclusions we can take from that, Jesse. I think it's interesting you mentioned his confidence issues because we know Coach Martin St. Louis has instilled so much confidence in the young guys this season, given them huge roles, made hockey fun for them, as Cayden Guhle said. But at the same time, if a guy like Puljujarvi were to come to Montreal, a much bigger and harsher environment than Edmonton, would he crack under the pressure? I don't know. Now, this is a guy who's played with Connor McDavid, has had some solid stats. He had a 15-goal and a 14-goal season. As I mentioned, he also had a 17-point World Junior Championships when he played there just a few years ago when he was 20 years old. And he's still 24. He's part of that era where a lot of teams were drafting for skilled, big guys. And we saw Montreal, to be honest, that era's not over. Montreal did that this year. Very similar pick in Juraj Slafkovsky, 1st overall. The Habs love their big skilled centers. Big skilled forwards, I should say. Dach, Anderson, Slafkovsky, and potentially Puljujarvi. I mean, I don't think it's an awful fit, especially as a buy-low project. Now, the problem is Montreal would have to move someone out. We've seen trade rumors surrounding Joel Edmundson, especially linking him to Edmonton, which I find very interesting. We have Sean Monahan. Lots of teams, especially maybe even a team like Edmonton, could want someone like that for a playoff push. There's a lot of guys. I mean, Josh Anderson, he's been rumored too. Jesse, who do you think we'd have to give up to Edmonton? Who would Edmonton want from us? And I mean, you just raised that question, is it worth it? I mean, can you ever see a situation where Coach Marty St. Louis brings out the best in this guy who's been struggling in Puljujarvi?
Well, my preferred move, as much as possible, would be to put Wideman on waivers. Essentially maybe just to clear up a spot on the roster as well as some cap space for that. But if we had to, let's say, there has been so many rumors with Edmundson and the Oilers, and I mean, I get it. I still feel that Joel Edmundson is a great NHL defender, and I think he brings a lot to this team. I think he's really important. I don't think that we should be trading our veteran D-man at all because I think we need all the experience we can get. But I mean, if we were to do that, if that is hypothetically the direction that the Canadiens wanted to go, I think we would need to get much more than just Jesse Puljujarvi back for Joel Edmundson. I know we have mentioned Xavier Barco. Again, I know that many people are very high on him. I don't know if that's maybe something that they would consider. Maybe we'd have to give just a little bit more to maybe balance that out, maybe a 2-for-2 sort of trade. But it'd be interesting to see. We know that some moves are going to start happening really soon. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that article coming out today is very interesting timing. I mean, we know Puljujarvi's been disgruntled, but Montreal Hockey Now is on top of it, so we'll definitely have to keep an eye on it, see how it plays out. I wouldn't mind getting Wideman off the roster for another forward. I agree. Just having this young core could be amazing in the future. And speaking of young forwards, even if this Puljujarvi trade doesn't come through, there was an interesting move made today by the Nashville Predators. And I'll bring this up here now. Nashville waived a young forward by the name of Eeli Tolvanen. And here's what Montreal Hockey Now and Marco D'Amico, who wrote the article, has to say about it. Seeing as the Canadiens are dealing with an unfortunate streak of injuries, if Tolvanen clears the teams ahead of the Canadiens on the waiver wire priority list, they'd be wise to take a long look at the possibility of adding him. The Canadiens should be able to provide a much healthier environment for his development, especially if they free up minutes by trading some of their veteran forwards such as Hoffman, Dadonov, Monahan, and Armia. And I thought it was interesting that they mentioned Armia in this as well. I'm sure there's some kind of market for him. But again, we do have a problem where we have such a backlog of forwards, but a bunch are injured. At the same time, though, Jesse, Tolvanen, I'll bring up his stats here now. He's a 23-year-old winger. He has shown flashes of brilliance. He's a fast player. He hustles every single shift. I know some Predators fans have been frustrated with him in the past couple seasons for not getting things together. But I think they still like him, like his style of play. Like, if you look at 2020, 2021, the guy had 11 goals, 11 assists, 22 points in just 40 games. I mean, if we can't get Puljujarvi, do you think Tolvanen could also fit in our forward core? Or, again, do you think, like, a move would have to be made with one of our forwards first, where we have to trade Hoffman, Dadonov, Anderson, someone like that, before we go after a guy like this?
Well, this is, like, such a Kent Hughes type of potential move. To be honest, I'd actually probably prefer this one than the Jesse Puljujarvi one in this case, just for where he'd fit into our roster, probably, on the fourth line, essentially. But Kent Hughes likes to go with players that are still young. In this case, obviously, Tolvanen's not a prospect anymore, but he's still a young NHL player. So there's still time to mold him. I think he's really fast. So I think he would really fit into our transition puck, possession type of game that we like to play with Martin St. Louis. So I could potentially see him being like a really good fit. And I'm wondering if he might not just be like a late bloomer because he is still very young. And we've seen recently, he's 23 years of age, where Tage Thompson, he's 25 years of age, where he's having an amazing season, and last couple of seasons, but he's been a late bloomer. He only started getting on the rate that he is now at the age of 23. It totally makes sense. Some players, it takes them a little bit longer, but that's still plenty of time to have a very long and healthy NHL career. So I think it'd be worth it to maybe, take a look at it if it really fits with everything else that we want to do.
Yeah, we have some forwards that, even though we have some injuries, we have some guys we can afford to get rid of. I mean, Rem Pitlick has unfortunately not followed up his spectacular 2021-22 season so far this year. Michael Pezzetta has just unfortunately not really looked like an NHL player. We have other injuries, but I think the biggest problem with this Tolvanen move is that, Jesse, I'm just going to say, I don't think he's going to fall to Montreal on the waiver wire. I think another team is going to try and scoop him up. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. I mean, this guy scored a hat trick in his first KHL game and was the youngest player in KHL history to score a hat trick. Like, this guy has potential. Absolutely. I think he just needs the right opportunities. He's still young to be coached. I think we have a great environment. We have a focus on youth. So I think it might be an interesting direction to look at.
Yeah, I'd be excited to see Tolvanen on the roster. I think he could provide some very solid third to fourth line minutes this year. But again, with either of these moves, and with many moves that Montreal could make this season, the problem is we have a backlog of forwards, and a lot of them are older, not old, a lot of them are older, and on bigger contracts. I mean, even now, it's like, it feels like we're scrambling to make room, and it feels like not too long ago that we were saying, well, there's not that much room for Slafkovsky. Well, he might get sent down, but obviously he stayed up. Byron's LTIR, I don't think he's ever really going to come back, not with Montreal. Gallagher's now injured, but he's $6.5 million. Drouin is looking like he'll be back soon, potentially healthy scratch. Hoffman is finally back in the lineup. Dadonov will be back, and Monahan's out now too. We need to make room, straight up. I think Kent Hughes has been fielding phone calls. In fact, we have articles saying that he's been fielding a lot of phone calls, especially on a few players. We might make a video about that in the future on the top 3 guys that the Habs have been shopping. But a move needs to be made. Maybe not needs to, but I think a move is coming. And I think if a forward gets moved, keep your eye out for the Habs to maybe go after someone like Tolvanen in the next day while he's on waiver wires, or even Puljujarvi in the near future, a guy that the Habs have kicked tires on. So it's a very interesting update, a very interesting day today, Jesse. The Habs going after some project forwards. I'm kind of excited to see how this pans out. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an interesting part of the season, so I'll definitely be staying tuned.
Yeah, I mean, we got this coming up now before Christmas, and we're not even sniffing the trade deadline yet, but I'm sure we'll have a lot more content when that comes around, talking about some potential Habs moves. But other than that, that'll do it for today's news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like, subscribe to the channel. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers. You guys have been amazing with all the support. Our videos are doing so well, and we have all of you to thank for that. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next video.